All right. So hello, my name is Miss Samuel, and today we will be going through the process of creating an FSA ID. So as you'll notice, this is labeled FAFSA Workshop Part 1, and the FSA ID is the first step in completing your FAFSA. We'll go in a little bit into what the FSA ID, but before we do that, I wanted to introduce myself. I am new to the Scholarship Fund of Alexandria, and I'm joining the team as the Director of College Advising, and will be supporting both Mr. Waters and Ms. Harrington in ensuring that you're able to apply for colleges and apply for financial aid. One thing that I do want to note is that as this presentation is going on, you can use the Q&A function to answer to ask any questions that you might have about the presentation. Both Ms. Harrington, Mr. Waters, and a representative from Northern Virginia Community College will be in the chat answering your questions as you go along. Another thing to note is we do ask that you be patient as we go through these slides. We will be going through the process of creating an FSA ID slide by slide, and we know that everyone is operating at different paces. So just be patient with us as we work through these slides. If you do need interpretation, you can click the globe at the bottom of your screen. We have interpreters translating this presentation into Spanish, Amharic, and Arabic. So what is the FSA ID? The FSA ID is a username and password that you will use every year to fill out the FAFSA. It is also something that you will use later on down the line to complete federal student loan counseling and manage your student loans. Students must create an FSA ID in order to electronically complete and submit their FAFSA. If eligible, a parent must also create an FSA ID. And we'll go into a little bit about what eligibility looks like for parents. If a parent does not have a social security number, they will not be able to create an FSA ID, but that is fine because they can still sign the FAFSA using a printed out copy of the FAFSA. So who is eligible for the FAFSA? Students who are eligible to complete the FAFSA include US citizens and what the Department of Education refers to as eligible non-citizens. This can include permanent residents, students who have arrival departure records who list them as refugees, asylum granted, parolee, T visa holder, Cuban Haitian entrant, or a conditional entrant. This also includes citizens of the Republic of Palau, the Republic of Marshall Islands, or the Federated States of Micronesia. Students who are not eligible to complete the FAFSA electronically include students who are in the States on a student visa, on an exchange visitor visa, a diplomat visa, or students who are undocumented, or students who are also on any category that is not listed on the categories to the left. Now, just because you cannot complete the FAFSA electronically does not mean that you cannot receive aid. If you are in one of these categories, please reach out to the Scholarship Fund of Alexandria so we can counsel you on ways that you can finance your college education. So before we begin, in order to create an FSA ID, you're going to need your social security number, your own phone number or personal email address, as well as the phone number and email address of a parent. As stated earlier, there is both the student FSA ID and the parent FSA ID. When you're creating your student FSA ID, you do not want to use the phone number or email address that you will use for your parent's FSA ID. So at this moment, we ask that you open up a browser and go to this website to start. So the website is fsaid.ed.gov. Again, that is fsaid.ed.gov. And I'll just pause for a second for you to get the website loaded. Okay. So when you scroll down, you should see a screen that looks like this. The screen is asking you to create an FSA ID username. For your username, you're going to want to select a username that is between 6 to 30 characters. It should contain a combination of letters and numbers. Please note that the FSA ID username is not case sensitive. Your username should not contain your first, middle, or last name, your birth date, or your social security number. If it states that your username is taken, try a different username. Once your username is available, you will see the pop-up that you can see in the screen to the right stating that your username is available. So the next step is creating an FSA ID password. Your password must be between 8 to 30 characters. For your password, it must contain a combination of numbers, uppercase letters, lowercase letters, special characters. It cannot contain your first, middle, or last name, your birth date, or your social security number. And similarly to the username, once you enter in your password, it will let you know if you have met the criteria or if you have not met the criteria. If you have not met the criteria for the password, just erase and try to create a new password that does meet the criteria. When you are creating your FSA ID username and password, you will see an option to show text. If you select that box, you will be able to see your password to make sure that it is exactly what you want it to be. This is important because this screen is also important because you want to take a screenshot of your username and password. As mentioned before, this is information that you will need year after year and multiple times throughout this school year. So I want to give you the opportunity to either take a screenshot of this username and password, write it down, or take a photo. Again, this is information that is important for you to have. So please do take a screenshot so you do not lose this information. I'm just going to give you all a second to take that screenshot before moving on. Okay, so once you enter in your username and password successfully, you will be directed to the screen that you see on the right. Here, you are going to want to enter in your full legal name exactly as it appears on your social security card. You also are going to want to enter in your date of birth using the format provided below, as well as a social security number or alien registration number.
Ms. Samuel, this is Ms. Harrington. I just want to interrupt for 1 second. When students are entering their name, if your name is too long, just enter as many characters that will fit. We know lots of families have hyphenated last names and long half names. Enter as many characters that will fit.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Harrington. Okay, so I'm going to progress to the next screen. So it is possible that some of you may get a screen that looks like this. This is a screen that it's more likely that parents will come across, and it's for people who already have an existing FSA ID. So I'm going to take a second to address people with this screen. If you encounter the red error message below, you likely already have an FSA ID. You might have created one for yourself a few years ago if you were enrolled as a student, or perhaps for an older son or daughter who has already attended school. In order to access your FSA ID, you're going to click on the cancel button in the upper right-hand corner. After that, you are going to be returned to the home page of the FSA ID. You're going to want to scroll down, and instead of clicking create a new FSA ID, you'll click manage my FSA ID. So you can try to enter in your username and password if you remember it. If you don't, you can click on the forgot my username or forgot my password links below. Once you do that, you will be taken to a screen. You will have the option to either have a secure code emailed to you, texted to you, or answer your challenge questions. I do recommend, if you can, to have that code, to recover that code via email or text, because those are the most straightforward ways to do that. You will have to provide the email address or phone number that you used when you originally created the FSA ID. So once you're able to go through that process, you will be able to access your FSA ID account. For people who are creating a new FSA ID, you should be on step 2, the contact information. Here is where you will enter in your email address. It is very important that you enter in an email address, enter in a personal email address. So students, your ACPS email will not be available to you after you graduate, but your FAFSA, your FSA ID is something that you will use for years after you graduate. So you're gonna wanna use a personal email address. If you or your parent do not have a personal email address, you can make one using Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, or your preferred email address provider. You also are going to want to enter in your mailing address and your phone number. You'll notice under the place where it states mobile phone, there is a checkbox listed for you to receive codes from the FSA ID. Strongly recommend that you check that box off so that you can easily recover your username or password in case it is lost. And I'll give you a few seconds to fill out that section. So once you're done, you're going to want to select next, and you will be taken to step 3. These are the challenge questions and answers. Again, this section is important because it allows you to recover your lost username or password in the instance that you do forget it. Here, you're going to be asked to select from 4 different questions. You're going to be asked to select 4 different questions and provide answers. So here, you're going to want to make sure that these questions are questions that could not easily be guessed by others. You also are going to want to choose questions and answers that will not change. As mentioned before, the FSA ID is something that you are going to be using from years on end. So it's something that you want to remember 3 or 4 years down the line. Once again, we recommend clicking Show Text. The Show Text button exists below each question and answer option. If you click Show Text, not only are you able to see the answers you provided to make sure that they are correct, you can also take a screenshot of everything that is listed and write them down just in case you need to refer to them in the future. So this is a longer section, so I'm just going to make sure I'm giving everyone time to record all of their questions and answers. All right, so I'm going to progress to the next slide. So once you are finished with all of that, you are going to be directed to step 4. Step 4 is where you will confirm and verify the information that you listed in steps 1, 2, and 3. You can use the arrows on the right hand of the screen to expand all of the selections and view everything that you've written. You can make changes if needed. Once you are done reviewing all of the information and everything is correct, you are going to want to check the box at the very bottom of the screen and then select continue. Again, I'm going to pause here to make sure that everyone has time to fill that section out. Okay. So once you select continue, you should be directed to a screen that looks like this. So your secure code has been sent to the email address that you listed in step 2. So here you are going to want to either open your personal email in a separate window or browser, or pull up your email on your phone. There should have been a verification code sent to you from the Department of Education. If you have not yet received it, you should wait a minute or two in order for the code to appear. You can also check your spam box just in case it landed there. If you have waited for a while and the code has not yet, and you have not yet received the code, what you can do is press the resend code at the very bottom of the FSA ID screen to try to have that code sent to you again. Again, the purpose of verifying your email address is to ensure that you are able to recover your username or password in case that information gets lost. So I'm going to pause for a second to make sure that everyone has time to complete that process. Okay, so once you enter in the code and select next, you will be directed to a screen that looks like this. So if you're seeing this screen, your FSA ID has been created. You should also receive a confirmation email from the Department of Education stating that your FSA ID has been created. And then within the next 2 to 3 days, you should receive an email from the Social Security Administration that will either verify that your Social Security information is matched, or it will alert you to any problems with your Social Security number. If you do get an email alerting you to problems with your Social Security number, please do reach out to myself or any member of the Scholarship Fund of Alexandria so that we can assist you with this. So the next steps is signing up for step 2 of the workshop. Now that you and hopefully your parent has created an FSA ID, you are able to complete the FAFSA. So we have 3 different FAFSA workshops where we will actually be going through the actual application for federal student aid. One will take place this Thursday, and the other 2 are Wednesday, October 14th at 3:30 p.m. and Monday, October 19th at 11 a.m. You will receive a follow-up email with links for you to register for these FAFSA workshops. In order to fill out the FAFSA, you and your parent should bring the following information. Should bring your FSA ID, along with your parent's FSA ID, username, and password. Should bring your Social Security number or alien registration number. If your parent does not have a social security number, but you do, your parent is still, your parent will just enter in 9 zeros when they are asked to provide their social security number. You will still be able to complete your FAFSA. You also are going to want to bring in your 2019, 1040, and W-2s. So your tax return forms. You also are going to want to make sure that you bring in student and parent 2019 untaxed income records, if applicable. You also are going to want to bring in your family's current bank statements, business and investment records, as well as information on date of births, email addresses with passwords to make sure that you can access those email addresses, and mailing address information.
Samuel, I just got a question and I'd like to address that about parent information. There is a checklist that we are going to be emailing in your follow-up from this workshop that asks if you're a dependent or independent student. If you answer yes to any of those questions, what it does, it tells you you could file your FAFSA as an independent student, meaning you don't have to provide any parent information. The specific situation the person asked about is if the student is living without their parents, and it's very specific. If parents are deceased, a child is a ward of the court, there's a whole checklist. So we'll send you that information. And if you have any questions about that information, you can reach out to Ms. Samuel, myself, Ms. Harrington, or Mr. Waters, and we can talk you through that and help you determine whether you can complete the FAFSA as an independent student or whether you'll complete the FAFSA as a dependent student and whether you need to provide parent or guardian information.
Yes, thank you so much. That's a very important thing to note as well. So we are here to help. As Ms. Harrington said, both myself, Ms. Harrington, and Mr. Waters are more than willing to assist you with every step of the college application process, whether that be FAFSA or financial aid, or building and finalizing your college list. Our contact information, both emails and phone numbers, are listed below, and we are happy to help you and your family with any step of the college application process. So with that, I'm just going to see if there are any questions.
Ms. Samuel, I do have one. Someone asked how they can manage their account. When you go to fsaid.ed.gov, you have the opportunity to create an account or manage an account. If you received notification that your Social Security number is already attached to an account, you're going to go to the Manage My Account tab. That's how you're going to try to look up your username and password. If you're having any problem, you can reach out to Ms. Samuel, myself, or Mr. Waters, and we can walk through that process with you.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much for coming. You will be receiving a follow-up email with next steps.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt one more time. And it's a good question. Someone asked where they find their FSA ID. It's actually the FSA ID, it's kind of confusing. It's not a number. You created your FSA ID. So your FSA ID is the username and password you created today. It's not a specific number like a Social Security number or a student ID number. Your FSA ID is the username and password you created today.
Okay. And for anyone who wasn't able to create an FSA ID today, or maybe wants assistance in creating one, we will be providing a link for you to sign up to work with one of the three of us in making sure that that FSA ID username and password, that you're able to create your FSA ID username or password. So if there aren't any more questions, I am happy to, this marks the end of this webinar. Thank you all so much for coming. And again, you guys can email us with any remaining questions or answers that you have, either in regards to the FSA ID process or the process of completing your FAFSA. All right, thank you and have a good day.